Welcome Internet to Psychoanalytic Talk, and today we're going to be talking about the differences between the Thing-in-itself of Immanuel Kant and Lacan's Real. So let me preface this by saying that I am by no means a philosopher. Therefore, the more nuanced aspects of the Thing-in-itself might not be quite grasped by myself. So please keep that in mind. I don't want to, overstate my abilities. But I found the differences to be very interesting because for a very, very long time I thought that the two concepts were virtually synonymous. But when I read Žižek's How to Read Lacan book, very good, he said that there is a number of differences between both ideas. And that's what we're going to be talking about mainly today, is those differences. So let's begin by defining the two concepts very quickly. The Thing-in-itself of Kant is basically the outside world that we do not know of and we cannot know of, the unknowable. These things defy just our experience, but really we can't fully understand them. It's something that basically kind of breaks our understanding and cannot even be attempted. So fundamentally, these sins are the sins in themselves. So it seems stupid to say that like that, but what I'm trying to get to is that they exist beyond our simple subjectivity, i.e. there would be no humans on Earth, there'd still be gravity, there'd still be the sun, there'd still be animals, and so on and so forth. So therefore they exist beyond us, but they are also unknowable, because we cannot fully understand them. Like they stay in our consciousnesses as sins that are ungraspable, that we can only kind of define them, but not really. Like a very interesting sin would be to say that it's like an image. We have an image of, for example, the beach, but we're not at the beach. And the sin in and of itself is the beach, but our representation is only merely a picture of the beach. So it does, in a way, resonate with Plato's world of ideas, that i.e. all our objects, i.e. all our tools, are copies of an ideal, i.e. they're just copies of copies, and that the ideal, the world of ideas, is in a way inaccessible to us. And I think Kant is in that lineage, I think. Of course, I'm not a philosopher, so maybe I'm a little off with this, but fundamentally, what we have to understand is that when we see something, when we perceive something, we only perceive it in a certain way. Our senses, our processes, even our psyche does not conceive of it in its full totality. And that full totality is the object in of itself, or in itself. I like saying in of itself, but it's not right. So the real word is object in itself. So fundamentally, there is always a very rough limit to our perceptions and to our understanding of any given sin. That unsqueezable unknownness is part of basically the object in of itself. Right? So it's something that goes beyond our understanding and exists beyond us in our subjectivities. So it seems quite similar, because in this concept of the unknown, we also find on another level the concept of Real of Lacan. So the concept of Real, or the real in English, is this idea that something unknowable happens, something that goes beyond the meaning that we have ascribed to our lives, and can even dislocate or dissolve the meaning we have. So for Lacan, the real is interconnected with our subjectivities. For example, if there were no human, there'd be no real. Le réel is something that exists as a negative of our subjectivity. What does that mean? Well, very simply, all our lives, basically, we have grown to develop a sense of identity, a narrative of who we are, be it a positive narrative, a bad narrative, a narrative nevertheless. That narrative, very importantly, is more fragile than what we think, because it can be broken, it can be harmed, of course by life events, but also by trauma, by horrors, and so on and so forth, by terrible occurring events, or by a psychotic break. In all of these events, what happens is that the meaning of our lives, our narratives, has been broken. The real is that moment of break, that unknowable version of where we are. It's not simply trauma for trauma's sake. It's something that really renders everything that has been built void, null and void. And for example, for certain authors like Le Bigot, a psychiatrist, death is the real, like the end of life, the moment where meaning ceases to be. And what we can see here is that in introducing meaning and subjectivity, Lacan breaks from Kant's vision of the object in itself. What happens is that Lacan is reinstating subjectivity and reinstating the real as part of the subjectivity, but part of the subjectivity that is unemployable by the rest, i.e. it's something that remains detached and that cannot be integrated, inintégrable en français. Not sure I can say it in English quite as well. So, what happens is that because it cannot be integrated, when events occur that make it come back, like a psychotic break, the person is in a state in which they have to fill in a meaning. The meaning has to be rebuilt, but it's rebuilt quickly and in a caricatural way, i.e., for example, psychotics who will have delusions, and people who live trauma and who are not psychotic might feel that all their life has been pointless, meaningless, that nothing exists, and they themselves cease to be. So here we can see that the fundamental difference is that Kant's idea is an objective idea, i.e. it exists in the world beyond what we can perceive, and in reality, in the what could be called the beyond man aspect of it. Like it comes to a point where the object in itself exists regardless of us. The real does not exist regardless of us. It exists because of us. We make the real, because when we create a symbolic meaning, a narrative, something that we hold dear to because it's part of us and we have invested so much of ourselves into it, that self, that narrative self, is not absolute, it's not total. It's something of a lack that is beyond any integration in the psyche. And often we can live our lives never really thinking about it, right? It's kind of the aim, right? To never think about the real until it occurs, right? So because there's a sort of, maybe not of naivete, but there's something of like insouciance, i.e. something of a pleasant life, a bliss in it. But when it occurs, when that fundamental breach expands, it dissolves the whole identity of the individual in a way that the object, the sin in itself doesn't. Sin in itself could be considered as a foreign body within our minds, i.e. something that we just can't achieve, we can't understand, right? It's not something that breaks, it's something that is ungraspable. The real is not something that's ungraspable. It's something that, in a way, dissolves. It's something that attacks the mind itself, because the mind collapses, and it's something that just is the negative of our subjective experience, negative of our stories. In a way, the object, I keep saying object, but it's the sin in itself. The sin in itself isn't. Something that is a bit, how can I say, is unknowable, but it's objectively detached from us. it is ununderstandable even by science, but it exists. The real is the disavow of our being, i.e. our being comes to be disowned of itself because of what is happening, because of the psychotic element, because of the lack of meaning. All of that meaning is what creates the real, as the real is the, sorry for the poetic mindset, but it's basically the enemy of meaning. What is meaning averse, right? Whereas the sin in itself is not really part of meaning, it's just beyond. So that's fundamentally what I understood, that how the fundamental difference between those two sins is subjectivity, human subjectivity. The sin in itself is objectively existent and we can't understand it. The real of Lacan is something that is part of us and is always there, but it's something that we can deal with, except when the meaning of our lives collapses. Then the real occurs and basically dissolves what's left. Therefore, when the real occurs, the whole work of the therapist is try and rebuild meaning with the patient. Something that can be very complicated as trauma and psychosis attack directly the narrative of one's life, the being of one's life. So both fundamentally are very different. And I should add, because it's very important, at some point in his career, Lacan used the real interchangeably, conceptually, with the sin in itself. So both of them were used by Lacan as synonymous before he decided to split parts. And the split is important, the breaking part, because in a way it is a very subtle nuance, the one of subjectivity, because it implies two different sins. For Lacan, it implies that we remain in the realm of the mind, whereas Kant is more about the idea and the objective truth of the phenomena. So fundamentally, both are very interesting, and I really hope I got this right. But because, as I said in this video, I am not an expert, I might have gotten some subtleties wrong. If ever I have, feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll try and pin it if ever it's something that is accurate and brings new perspectives. So whatever the case, feel free to put a comment. I'll see you in the next one.